Welcome back, junkies. This is the Daily Wealth Junkie Show, and thanks for joining us today. We've got an awesome, pretty unique show here for you today. But first, be sure to follow us on Facebook and join the group at facebook.com/groups/wealth junkies and subscribe to the show so that you don't miss any of our daily shows. And with that, Will, let's get started. And who do we have today?
Thank you, Brandon. Today we have Colin Mcintosh. He is the founder and CEO of one of the fastest betting. I'm sorry, I totally botched that. He is the founder and CEO of one of the fastest growing betting companies in the United States called Sheets and Giggles. Pretty interesting, unique name. I'm sure you know what it's a play on. But
Yeah.
anyways, they make sustainable bed sheets made out of eucalyptus instead of bamboo. And with that, Colin, why don't you give the listeners a little bit more about your background and how you got to where you are today?
Yeah, sure. So I appreciate you guys interviewing me today. It's pretty cool. But so basically,
Absolutely.
I founded Sheets and Giggles. It'll be 2 years ago in about a week, and which is pretty crazy to think about. But before that, I was at a wearable tech company that had raised millions of dollars from VCs. So was in the VC world and tech world for a while. And then prior to that, I was in B2B SaaS. And before that, I was actually a recruiter. And then now working backwards, I started my career at the world's largest hedge fund. So I've had a very weird, super weird
Wow.
career. Yeah.
Yeah, it's you bounced around from different things to different things.
Yeah.
And now he's in bed. If you guys are
Now-
watching on
yeah.
YouTube, he's sitting in bed and just really, really comfortable. So
You always got to be on brand.
Yep.
So yeah, I like to do all my interviews from bed. I like
love
to work from bed. My team, we've got about 10 people that work on the company with me, and we're remote usually 2 days a week, sometimes 3. It's very. I like to extend kind of the way that I like to do things out to the team. So if you want to work from bed, from home, you want to go fly to Munich for a month and work from Munich, like it's totally cool with me. And so I love
Very
that type
cool.
of working style. Yeah.
So are the desks at the office beds instead of actual desks? Or?
No, we do have a cot at the office though. And so
Nice.
we do our Amazon live videos from the cot. And then we've got, a couple Alexas, we've got, a little refrigerator keg, it's a fun little office. It's the office you
Yeah.
expect for a company called Sheets and Giggles. Yeah.
Right. Very cool.
Very cool. So tell us about going backwards in time. Tell us about when you started at the hedge fund, kind of what you were looking to do with that and why you got out of it.
Well, I got out of it. I got fired in 5 months.
Oh.
So basically,
Okay.
the hedge fund was called Bridgewater Associates. For your listeners, that's the world's largest hedge fund. And I think when I was there, they had like something like 160 or 170 billion dollars under management.
Wow.
I graduated from Emory University in 2012 with a BBA in finance and econ and business law. And I got offered a job there. I thought I was on top of the world, world's largest hedge fund. And I was, this is not meant to be disparaging at all to Bridgewater, legally speaking. But so I did not enjoy my time there. I got let go, I think in 5 months. And it was really hard. I mean, they would tell me things like your greatest weakness is your empathy. And other things that kind of took me a while to like break out of that type of feedback loop. And so really, I think maybe less than 6 months out of school, I was kind of like, I felt like my whole career was blown up. I had no idea what I was going to do. I was living in Connecticut with like Norwalk, Connecticut. I don't know if you guys have been to Norwalk, but it's an awesome little town. Best Venezuelan food I've ever had at this restaurant there called Valencia. Shout out to Valencia. But other than that, I didn't know anybody in Connecticut, and I thought my entire life was over.
Right.
And end of 2012, it was awful.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to ask. What did you learn from being fired from there? Because a lot of times, being fired is a traumatic event for a lot of people. So, what did you learn anything from it? Kind of what you wanted or what you didn't want in your life?
It was traumatic in some ways. In other ways, I remember I was whistling as I drove out of the garage for the last time that last day. I was so happy. I was like,
Wow.
the best part of getting fired from a place, right, or fired or quitting, is that you never have to go back to that place again. And when you reach that breaking point, right, where whether you break or the company breaks and you decide, hey, we no longer want to have a working relationship, there's no better feeling than actually like skipping out of the office on that last day. So for me, I think it was an interesting time because I didn't really know what I was going to do. And I actually had the good fortune. And I think that this is where a lot of people, can catch a break or not catch a break. But I had the good fortune of still staying in touch and having a relationship with the recruiting firm that hired me at Bridgewater. And so I reached out to them, this guy named Nate, he's one of my best friends in the world now. And I told him, hey, I got fired. What do I do? Let's get dinner. He was like 25 at the time, so he didn't know a goddamn thing either. And so, we went out for dinner, and looking back, it's just funny. A 25-year-old advising 23-year-olds. And
blind leading the blind.
Yeah. It's funny. It's funny. And so, we got dinner, and he said, hey, you're a talkative guy, smart guy. You want to maybe come work for us as a recruiter? And so ironically, I ended up recruiting for Bridgewater and for other companies, with that firm, as well as I recruited for startups. And that's kind of how I got involved in technology. Was I had to teach myself everything I know about software, hardware. I had to teach myself, how to speak and interview with software engineers. There's gonna be a lot of software engineers in the audience that are like rolling their eyes, like, oh, this non-tech guy was interviewing folks. They were mostly informational interviews. They were a lot of sourcing,
Right.
a lot of screening. And I became friends with some of my candidates. Some of the best friends in the world are former candidates of mine. And I ended up actually hiring myself at one of the software startups in Seattle. So that's how I got into tech startups.
And you were pretty young. You said earlier you were 24 when you made that move over to Seattle?
When I moved to Seattle, I was actually 23. It was February 2014. So I'm a June baby. So I was only 23. I moved out there. That was a tough time, man. I moved out there with my ex-girlfriend, who I really loved dearly. I think we were in year 3 out of 4 in our relationship. And, we moved out to Seattle in February 2014. I think that we ended up breaking up like 6 months later around the summertime. And I actually ended up getting let go from that job in October of that year. So that was pretty brutal.
Man.
Yeah, that was a tough year. 2014 was a tough year, man.
You sound like a horrible employee. You're getting fired all over the place.
At some point, I think that I realized I am a terrible employee.
As most entrepreneurs do.
Yeah. And it's funny because there were different reasons why I really loved recruiting. I actually excelled as a recruiter, and I ended up hiring myself at one of my clients. So that was a really good way to leave a firm. Ended up just not fitting in well with that company in Seattle, unfortunately. And so it was a really interesting time for me because I had to ask myself a lot of hard questions about like what I wanted to do and where I wanted to be, and do I want to go back to Florida, which is where I'm from, to be with my family? Do I want to stay in Seattle? Do I want to move somewhere else? And so, actually I ended up, because I was so in love with startups and so in love with the startup ecosystem, I actually ended up taking an opportunity, a really, really lucky opportunity, where I had written a business plan for a company back when I was 22 or 23 that one of my friends ended up founding and becoming CEO of. And she called me in early 2015 and basically told me, hey, we got into Techstars. I don't know if you guys know what Techstars is, but they're an accelerator. They give you $100,000. They put you in a room with 10 other companies for 3 months, and they tell you to go crazy. And I love the Techstars ecosystem. I had known about them. They're very similar to Y Combinator, for listeners who know what Y Combinator is.
Is it kind of like a business mastermind?
Kind of.
Okay.
Yeah. So basically it's like Techstars is they get like 1,000 applicants per program every year. I think they have 40 or 50 programs now around the world, maybe more actually. And Boulder is the flagship program. So it started in Boulder, Colorado. And so my friend Jackie called me. She said, for this wearable tech company that I mentioned earlier, she said, hey, we got into Techstars. I want you to join us full time. Like you'll be on the founding team, since I was there since the idea inception. And so I kind of just dropped everything. I drove 20 hours down to Denver from Seattle. And that summer was a summer I think that really changed my life very dramatically from a professional level, because I learned a lot about starting a business, about venture capital, about investment, fundraising, about how to take over from an idea to a nationwide retail launch, which is what we did. I mean, we were 25-year-old kids, and we took a product nationwide at Brookstone, Target, a bunch of other great retail partners, and that was a really transformative experience for me.
So with that decision, with that opportunity from Seattle to Colorado, what was your thought process going through there to make that decision to move? Because I'm sure there's a lot of people out there that think, hey, if I move to this location, I have this opportunity, but there's something holding them back. You understand what I'm saying?
I do. Yeah. I think for me, geography has never been a limiting factor for me.
Mhm.
I always like to move where the greatest opportunity is. So I moved to Connecticut, lived in Norwalk and New Haven, which for folks that are familiar with Norwalk and New Haven, I mean, small towns, cold, Northeast is not really my weather scene. I moved to Seattle, having never lived out there, been out there before, because it was an opportunity with a startup that I thought was really cool. I moved to Denver for Techstars, and now I have my own company here. I've been here 4 years, and I think that it was just what pushed me over the edge was really I had, and this is I think where a lot of millennials kind of find or found themselves in, where I was 3 years out of school. I had 3 jobs. I, hadn't really found my niche. I had worked in finance, recruiting, and B2B SaaS. Hadn't really fallen completely in love with any of them. And I was kind of like 24, 25, and I was like, I don't know what I want to do for the rest of my life, but I feel like it's not any of these things.
Mhm.
And I also feel like this is a once in a lifetime type of opportunity to join a company as part of the founding team. I was getting paid $1,600 a month, which was like pre tax, like just barely enough to have
Right.
have pasta every night, which I did, which I still do. I love pasta. It was just kind of like a why not type of scenario where it was like I get to work with my friends. I get to build something that I believe in. It was a mission driven company. It was a hardware to try to fight sexual assault and violence. So I was really like gung ho on the mission.
That's cool.
Yeah. And so it was more like why not? And it was kind of like a career reset for me. Like I needed something like that, change of scenery, change of pace. And I got it. I mean, Techstars that summer was an incredible experience for me.
That
That's
is, yeah, that's awesome.
and that's perfect too that you're at that age, 24, 25-year olds, and that's really what we're trying to, you know, hone in on is those 24, 25, 26 year olds that are pretty much in that same situation that, fuck, I've had 3 jobs and this shit sucks.
Right,
And
right.
and
And you're moving a little bit, right? Like,
right.
like your salary's bumping a little
Right.
bit, and like maybe if you join a startup. And here's the other thing, and this is just a tangent. And this is actually goes into why I started my own company in 2017. So about two and a half years later. Um, when you're working for somebody else's startup, and I see a lot of people that are 22, 23, 24 that do this, even into their 30s. They work at other people's startups because these CEOs and founders, in my opinion, are very disingenuous with dangling stock options in front of people. They say, okay, we'll give you X% of the company. Usually it's single digit percentage wise, or fractional percentage. And we're going to be $1 billion company, or at least that's the goal. So here's your lotto ticket. And if we wind up being $1 billion valued company, then your 1% is equivalent to $10 million. How fucking cool is that? And and a lot of these 24-year-olds or 23-year-olds are like, that's amazing, I'm so excited about this. And even I was like that with the last company, that a wearable tech startup. I was in the founding team, but I certainly didn't have a founder share of equity. um
Mm.
and so I think that that's something that a lot of people need to think about also when they're joining startups, is like, what am I giving up to be at this startup?
Mhm.
What salary am I giving up to be at this startup? What are the potential outcomes? Because you're taking options in a company that, A, in order to exercise, you have to buy at a certain strike price. And then B, you're basically taking options in a company that you have no control over whether that company is successful or not. You can do your part, you can do
Right.
your role, but at the end of the day, it's the CEO, the board, and the people that put in the most money that are going to dictate what happens to that company. You don't know the terms they're going to raise money on. I think like Tinder is a classic example, right? Of they sold for like $500 million to Match
Mhm.
company. And I don't think any of the employees saw any significant money whatsoever, because their investors had something like a 2x liquidation preference, which people don't even know what that is, right? But it means the investors get 2x their money back before anybody else ever sees a dime from the rest of the capital.
Oh,
And so like
Wow.
anyway, this is a tangent, but I think that this is why I started my own company in 2017. Is I was sick of working for other people, because when you're working for other people, you're doing one of two things. You're trading your hours for salary, right? For wages. And it's really hard to build wealth that way over a period of decades. and then or two, you're kind of buying a lotto ticket into another person's company that you have no control over, and that oftentimes isn't going to be a significant payout unless you happen to get lucky and work at Facebook. So yeah.
Yeah, and they say that, you know, I always grown up lottery tickets. That's a poor man's game. So I mean, that's not the. It's they don't they say that the lottery is the tax on the poor. You know
Right.
how yeah.
It
So
is,
that
and what
right.
I do with what I do with our company that I love is, I tell my employees that exact same thing. I say don't over index on the equity that you're going to get in the company. Like, I give people equity as a way for them
Nice.
to share in our success if we are eventually successful.
Mhm.
But I pay everybody market rate. We have healthcare. The last person I hired, they said, I want, X $1,000, and I said, well, how about X plus 5? So I paid them more than they were asking
That's
for.
cool.
And I do that because, and I tell them, like, don't bank on these options being worth anything, because you're basically banking on me making decisions that are going to be in your
Right.
benefit when I make
Absolutely.
this sell decision. And I don't like that. And so I think that and so, I'm kind of criticizing some of my fellow founders in the area, but I love everybody in the startup scene, but I mean, everybody's got these rose colored glasses on. And so I would
Right.
say only work at a startup if it's your own, or if you're getting some very significant experience out of it, in which
Mm,
case taking lower than market rate and that sort of thing can be valuable.
Absolutely.
got it.
So
Can
so go ahead, Will.
yeah, yeah. Can you go on that? Not to go on another tangent, but
I'm all about tangents.
I'm
So
gonna ask you to go on another tangent
yeah,
here.
sure.
Can you explain that thing you did before we started recording, just about how
Mm.
you remember that?
Yeah, the survival check. So
Hmm.
I've
Yeah.
got this really flippant way of, like, describing a paycheck, and I call it a survival check, because I really can't stand the society that we built for ourselves. And this is actually why I started the company, is because I had two choices after leaving the hardware company. And I was either going to go back to Seattle, go work at Amazon, say fuck all this startup nonsense, and, probably make anywhere from, like, I don't know, 150 to $200,000 a year for the foreseeable future.
Which for, a 25-year-old person, that's a great day,
Well, I was 27 at the time when I found
27, but still, I mean,
now I'm 29, right?
yeah.
Like, and so I'm an old man now.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm old and gray. I'm gray and gray by the day. And I basically was like, all right, so I'm going to do that, or I'm going to start my own company. And there was no in between. I wasn't going to work at somebody else's company. I wasn't going to work at a small business. It
Mm,
was going to be like corporate safety or total risk.
go all in.
Yeah,
Yeah.
go all in. And I decided to go all in because the survival check thing really nagged at me, where I was like, I'm going to have to go to an office at an arbitrary time, stay there until another arbitrary time. I'm going to have to, during that time, sit across from a manager who's going to tell me feedback about myself that I already know, whether I'm defensive or I'm late or whatever it is. And I'm going to have to agree with him every day, over and over and over again, for the remainder of my life, for 4 decades, just to continually get a survival check. And if I step out of line, or if I say the wrong thing, or if I do the wrong thing, or somebody doesn't like me for whatever reason, or a new boss comes in, or a new manager comes in, and I don't like them and I need to quit, then I need to find somewhere else who's going to give me my survival check, my food check, my water check, my shelter check, my medicine check. And I think that it's fucking crazy that
That is so good.
I hate it. I just hate the overall, and
Yeah.
it's a very first world thing to describe, right? Where it's like first world problem to describe, where it's like, oh, this fucking guy doesn't like the safety of, like, a 9 to 5 paycheck. Like, I get it that, like, there's a lot of people in other parts of the world and or in the United States that would freaking, that would give anything to have that type of 9 to 5 type security and opportunity.
Right.
And so I also want to make sure that I'm not coming across as a total asshole to people that are listening. But, like, there's I'm self-aware about what I'm saying. But, like, there's a certain,
No,
I think, a breaking point that some people reach when they have a certain personality set, like me, where I'm terrible with authority.
yep.
I hate taking orders from other people. I disagree with orders a lot. And I'll be a good soldier, and I'll march in a direction, but I'll
Mhm.
always say my piece. And oftentimes it's the saying of the piece that really upsets the manager about if somebody disagrees with the decision.
Right.
Um, and so I just decided at one point, I was like, I'm gonna have to do this shit anyway for 40 years, like, whether or not my business succeeds. So let me give this a shot, take 6 months, start my own company, and then very methodically decide whether or not it's going to be successful. And there are data-driven ways to decide whether or not a startup is going to be successful very, very early on before you spend any significant amount of time or money. And I basically, I founded the company in October, and I said October 2017, and I said, I know that this is going to be successful or not by February. I had set up my metrics to like my KPIs for what success would look like, which is a Bridgewater term. What does success look like? Some of that shit's just never leaves you.
Key performance
so,
indicator, right?
yeah,
That's
KPIs,
hey, I'm a
yeah,
hedge.
yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm not a hedge fund guy.
Yeah, and so basically, I decided that I was just going to give it a shot, and I said, look, the worst case scenario is if it doesn't work out, I spend Q4 with my family. I am a few months behind the 8 ball in finding a new job, and I'll just go work at Amazon anyway and lose 6 months of salary. Like, who cares? So that was kind of where I was at. Now I had savings to live off of for that period of time.
Yeah.
So that's, not everybody, but
right. You're not just jumping off the cliff and saying, fuck it, it
and I
is
think,
what it is.
And there are metrics around people that are, the success rate of businesses started by people in their 30s and 40s, specifically 40s, is way, way higher than people in their 20s, especially the early 20s. And I think that part of that is the savings aspect, being a little more comfortable with floating on savings for a decent period of time, as well as just the experience that comes with failure and failing not only at maybe a business that you've started in the past, but also failing on other people's dime, and understanding what that looks like and how to avoid it.
Right. So what'd you do once you made this decision to start Sheets and Giggles? What'd you do? What was the first step?
First step, the very first step before I ever incorporated was I wrote a brand identity map. And well, actually, that's not true. That was the second step. The first step was I built the business model. So, and I think the audience should benefit a little bit from the way that I think. I hate these interviews because I'm like, oh, this can benefit people, and I feel so fucking hubristic when I say that. But like, I think that when so I started this business, and just for credentials piece, Sheets and Giggles, we're growing 5x year over year. We made $1 million in our first 12 months of sales. We just raised $1.5 million of extra financing this summer to accelerate our growth rate. Like, I feel validated in this decision to start a business, not necessarily because I don't think that we're successful by any stretch of the imagination, but I think we're on the path on that way, and that makes me happy. So just for anyone who's listening, who's like,
those are big numbers. I mean, people should definitely be listening to what you have to say.
I mean, look, I started a pun-based company. This has all been very difficult. So, and when I first told, it's funny. The first thing I ever did was I told my buddy Paul. I said, Paul is a really good guy. He's one of my initial investors. I love Paul. And I said, hey man, so I'm thinking about starting this company. And I told him about it, and I said, I want to start a company called Sheets and Giggles, betting, And he thought I lost my goddamn mind. I think his response is like, what the fuck are you talking about? But Paul, to his credit, he still was one of my very first investors because he just believed in my work ethic and what I was trying to do. So basically I sat down. I think I got laid off from my last job. We all did. It was a mass layoff, the whole company, unfortunately. 20 of us, at 1 p.m. on Monday, September 25th, 2017. And I will never forget that day. It was a tough day. I got wasted that night. I went out to the Rockies Marlins game in Denver. I'm a Marlins fan, which is also terrible. And so luckily they were in town. I went out to the game and got drunk. I told my buddies about this idea I had for this company I wanted to start, and they all thought I was just drunk, which I was, to be fair. And so the next day I slept in. I think I woke up. I did this calculus in my head that I told you guys about. Oh, I'm going to go work at Amazon, or I'm going to do this startup. And so I basically sat down and I wrote down my perfect business model. And I hadn't yet decided that I was going to do bed sheets. This is just the way I build a business model. I said, I want 5 or 6 main criteria. First and foremost, I want a physical product because I think that I'm best in the world. Every entrepreneur should ask themselves, like, what am I best in the world at? It's like the classic question before you start a business. So I was like, I think I'm best in the world at selling and distributing physical products. So I need a physical product. Number 2 is preferably with a low complexity supply chain. So no Bluetooth, no firmware, no industrial design, tooling, nothing like that. That's going to be extremely expensive, shorter, long-term to maintain or build. Number 3 is that I wanted something that was a massive commodities market. So something that I didn't have to build a new marketplace by myself, and something that everybody used. So I could, kind of carve out my own profitable niche. 4 was that I wanted a very flat brand space with no differentiation, so I could zig where everybody else was zagging. And then I also wanted something that was highly traditionally physical retail, so I could help bring it online with a direct-to-consumer model. And so I kind of looked at all the criteria that I had. I looked, and this is honest to God truth, I looked at all the domains that I had, and I owned sheetsgiggles.com. I also own like sunglasseshalffull.com and other pun-based domains.
It's like my dad. He's got, I mean, he's probably got 150 different domains.
It's an
that he
addiction.
buys.
It's a real addiction.
But you never know when they'll come in handy like this, right?
Hey man, I own a lot of domains, and they're all business ideas, and then I own a lot of them from my own company. So, so I basically looked at the domains, and I was inspired by my friends. I'm very good friends with the folks over at alarm.com, which is a big home security company, multi-billion-dollar market cap. And one of the co-founders there is a mentor of mine, and I asked her one time why they founded the company, and she said, well, one of the reasons was we owned alarm.com as a domain, and we thought, could we build a home security company around this very powerful brand name? And that's one of the main reasons why they did it. I thought that was incredible. And so
that's interesting.
Yeah. And it's not, I mean, there's many other reasons why, but like that was like a core thing for them, is like it was the most powerful brand name that they were going through this incubator. And so I basically thought to myself, does bedding fit my criteria? And it fitted almost perfectly. I mean, Bedsheet's a $12 billion US commodities market. It's highly fragmented. There's no market leader. There's no brand differentiation. Everybody's got, the white sheets with the white walls. There's always like some French press coffee sitting on the ever so precariously.
Right.
If you look at these, honest to God, if you look at all my competitors' Instagrams, you will see a French press coffee on the company.
That's funny.
It's usually a fern right there by the bedside too. So I thought it was a really funny space. I thought it was a really flat space that had very little in the way of brand innovation or product innovation. And so I also wanted a sustainability company. And so I basically set out doing a little materials research and sourcing, and had some conversations with some manufacturing folks that I know and mentors that I know on the manufacturing side. And I think that I sat down, I built out my brand identity map. I said, we're going to be a jester first and then a rebel in terms of brand archetypes. And that's a whole podcast around brand archetyping. And so then I incorporated the company. We did the logo. We had the website set up, and we were kind of off to the races. And then there's a lot of, what do you next type of things to go from idea to, I think we made our first $250,000 in our first 40 days of sales.
That's awesome.
35 days of sales.
That's
really
unbelievable.
Cool. Yeah.
What do you attribute that to?
Preparation. So that was all on crowdfunding. So, basically I was really sick of the VC investment game. I really don't like, this is a very broad statement, and I'm sure that some venture capitalists are really great people. In fact, I know that a lot of venture capitalists are really great people. But on the whole, I don't like VC and venture capital just because I think that it makes people addicted to raising money and not making money. And I think that's actually a quote by Brand Fishkin, who's the founder of Moz, where, we train young entrepreneurs to raise money and not make money. And I think that that's very dangerous because, if you make $10 million, like no one really gives a shit. Like, you're great, you're making money. That's what a business is supposed to do. But if you raise $10 million, TechCrunch writes an article about you, like your friends and family congratulate you on Facebook, somebody throws a party for you, you like, it's very intoxicating. And I think that that's not very healthy.
It's true. Similar in our business.
Yeah, no. And so I knew I wanted to raise crowdfunding. I wanted to do this revenue funded. And so I basically, I set out, I wanted to know if the business was going to be successful or not in the first month. And so what I did was I knew I was going to do a crowdfund. I chose Indiegogo over Kickstarter for certain reasons that are personal. I then basically said, okay, working backwards from my goal, I want to do $100,000 in revenue on this crowdfund in 30 days. The way the crowdfunding math works for anybody out there considering doing a crowdfund is that you're going to want 30% of the take in the first 24 hours, period. So I needed $30,000 in the first 24 hours. My average bedsheet price was going to be $70. I assumed the average customer would buy 1.5 units. That means that my average order value was going to be about $100. which means that if I needed $30,000 on day one, I needed 300 customers on day one. And if I need 300 customers on day one, and an email list reasonably converts at about 3%, and all your day one customers on a crowdfund are all going to come from your email list, whether it's friends and family or people you don't know. And so I said, okay, well, if my email list is going to convert at 3%, that means if I need 300 customers, I need 10,000 emails, period, end of story. And that became my just blinders on goal ahead of my May 1 crowdfunding launch. And that's
to get those 10,000 emails.
And we ended up doing 11,000 emails, and those 11,000 emails ended up converting at about a 4.5% clip.
Wow.
And we ended up doing $45,000 on day one on May 1st, 2018. And I knew that, like, I didn't spend, the money that I had allocated for this until that first week of Facebook ads. So basically, when I say whether or not we were going to be successful, I wanted to know that immediately. I really meant that. Like, if it wasn't going to be successful, I would just brush off my resume and go apply for something. But basically, in February, we did our first photo shoot. I did it with a photographer friend of mine for, I think like $500 or $1,000. She was really fantastic for us. So very minimal spend there. I had all my friends as models, my ex-girlfriend, and always get media release forms, by the way. You can always use, even if you break up with someone, you can still use their image if you have media release.
So you guys were dating at the time.
Yes.
That's funny.
Yeah. We're still on good terms. So I would take the pictures down if she asked me to take them.
That's funny.
To be clear. But so basically I ran like 50 different Facebook ad variants to about 12 different landing pages, different H1s, different H2s, calls to action, different images. And in that first week, I think that we captured 1,000 emails for something like $1,000 spend. So about a $1 cost per lead. And we converted emails at about a 35% clip, which was insane. Very few people ever capture emails at a 35% rate. And so we ended up optimizing our landing pages. And so basically from there, if that was the initial week, right, with all of our tests, I knew that we'd only go up from there. We ended up converting over the 8 weeks of preparation at a 46% clip, which is stupid from an email capture perspective. Our cost per lead was less than $1. And you can basically extrapolate.
That's crazy.
Well, and the best part is that you can extrapolate out your paid cost of acquisition from there, because if you're doing $1 per lead, let's say, and you think your email list is going to convert at 3%, just multiply your cost per lead by 33, boom, $33, and you just got, your initial cost of acquisition for your paid acquisition. You can do the unit economic math on if you're going to be profitable or not. And you're going to get organic sales. You're going to get word of mouth. And so that's as high as your acquisition is ever going to be on that crowd fund. And it's only going to come down from there. And so that was the moment I called some of my angel investors, including Paul and a few other people I'd worked with before. And I said, hey, I'm going to utilize this 60 grand. I raised $60,000 friend and family round. I said, I'm going to start utilizing it. I'm going to put a deposit down with our manufacturer. I'm going to blow up our pre-crowdfund marketing, and away we went. And so that was, I think I spent $1,500 before I ever decided to spend anything further after that first week of ads.
That's awesome. And that's so smart to do. I mean, utilize what's out there, the social media, the Facebook, like you said, the Facebook ads and the email captures. And
you just kind of reverse engineered the numbers. Yeah, that's great. Because what I see a lot of people is in my previous life in lending, people I work with would just, they'd set a goal and say, I want to do X amount per year.
Yeah.
And it's just this goal, and they're going to be all excited and try to get that. But it's like, what are you doing to get there? I'm a numbers guy. So it's like, if you want to do X amount, you need to make X number of phone calls to convert X number of, so, and nobody, or a lot of people don't do that.
That was drilled into me. Yeah. From when I was a recruiter, I remember that was my boss, Mike, who was probably the best boss I ever had. Mike, he taught me basically, if you're trying to make a hire per month or 2 hires per month or whatever our goals were, right? Then basically, okay, how many offers until you make a hire usually? Is it okay? Usually it's 3. How many interviews do you get before you find 3 offers from the client? And then how many people that say yes when you ask them to interview are actually going to interview? And then how many people are going to say yes out of your cold outreach? Like, so there's there's a math to it. You can tweak the math a little bit. I found that out early on in my career when I was the recruiter and I was writing cold outreach to these software engineers. Every recruiter is just terrible at writing cold outreach. They're just awful at it. And so I was able to work the numbers in my favor by writing like very personalized emails to people. And we still do that now at S&G. I think we had on our last email that went out, we had like a 50-ish% open rate, which is like really, really high for
that's huge.
Yeah,
tens of thousands of people on it. And like, that's I think that's just a testament to the fact that we never email them. Like we email them like once every month or two. And it's always like, we always kick it off with like, like, oh sheet motherfuckers. Like, it's like, another,
That's awesome. I love it. I love the pun play.
Yeah.
That's funny.
And because we want people to know, like, if you hear from us, it's not going to be another shitty, last day only stale email. It's going to be something fun and different and maybe a new product launch, and you're going to want to open an email. So,
I love it.
Awesome.
I love it.
So Colin, talk to us. Where do you see the business going, in the future, and what's your plans for the future with it?
Well, when I initially started the company, I told a lot of people I want this to be a lifestyle business. I was like, I want to make, honest to God, this was my goal. I did my calculation, $3,000 a month in profit. And that was all I needed to be independent. And that was the goal initially. That the entire goal was financial independence. And at that point, at 27 years old, what that meant to me was I needed to have $3,000 a month to spend on rent and food and medicine, and no one could touch me. I would never have to take another order from fucking anyone ever again. And that was like the initial goal. And I think within 1 week we had made our first $100,000.
Yeah, I was gonna say, it sounds like you're probably doing a little bit more than $3,000 a month.
My dad's got a lot more.
Yeah.
My dad's got a little saying. It's an old saying. When we did the Indiegogo, my dad called me and he was like, "It looks like you got a little bit of a tiger by the tail." And I was like, "Yeah, I think we did." And I think that was really the way that I think about it, is like, now I'm just kind of holding on for dear life. And, we've got a bunch of full timers now, and we got health care, and we got a finance team. And, now I'm making more money than, 2 years in than I did in my entire career. Now, I didn't have a paycheck for 15 months. I didn't pay myself a dime until February of this year. I had a second gig. I was doing consulting for Amazon sales for a whole year for 2 companies, where I was just making a couple $1,000s a month to pay my rent, basically
just to kind of skate by.
Yep, I had Cobra for my healthcare for 18 months, and then I didn't have healthcare for 3 months from March through July of this year because Cobra quit, and I had to get healthcare set up for the company. And there, like, and that's we could go on and on about that bullshit system about Cobra. I mean, that's ridiculous. And so, I think that when I look at the future, I'm trying to take it one step at a time and just say I'm just really, really happy to be where I'm at right now.
Yeah.
For me, I have very aggressive goals. I always have very aggressive goals. This year we're growing about 5x from last year. Next year, my goal is to grow 4x from this year. That type of exponential growth gets very difficult to keep up over time, especially for consumer focused companies. So I'm not, one thing I said earlier, I raised $1.5 million. Every investor I've ever pitched on this, I've specifically told that this is not a boom or bust VC business. I'm not trying to be, fucking Bed Bath & Beyond or Boll & Branch or Brooklinen or Parachute or would that be great? Like, yeah, of course. And I'll always chase the optimal outcome, like whatever I view as the optimal outcome. But for me, optionality is more important. And so by this time next year, I really want to have options in front of us where we're like, okay, we're on, this X $1 million a year run rate. Hopefully we're on like an 8-figure run rate by then. From there, and that'll be within like 2.5 years of sales.
That's incredible.
And I mean, I think that type of positioning will be able to say, okay, we want to raise a monster Series A. We want to sell the company for some multiple of top line revenue, as long as our unit economics are sound, which they are. Or 3, we want to turn this into a profitable company that spins off dividend checks. And I think I'll be very happy with any of those outcomes. And I try not to get too tied down to any of them, because I think that's also where a lot of founders get emotional about which path like business should take.
Yeah, what a great problem to have that is, to just
Well,
have all
exactly.
those
Yeah, it'd
options.
be
Yeah.
lovely. It'd be,
Yeah.
if I like, that's where the problem at right now. Right now, we can't keep sheets in our warehouse, man. Like right now,
That's
I'm pulling my hair out,
yeah.
trying to like literally trying to get more units to our warehouse to manufacture faster. And it's we just launched our new throw blanket last week and we blew it out. We did it like a $30 price, which is stupid because the number one selling fleece blanket on Amazon is $25, which influenced my thinking on that in terms of product road mapping. And we priced our sustainable eucalyptus one at $30, which is really dope.
Wow.
And we sold like 500 in like 2 days, and I was like, oh shit! Like I was like, this means this is underpriced.
Yeah.
Yeah. Supply and demand. Wow.
Yeah. And so, but yeah, like that type of the problems are good problems, and I just trying to be happy with, I haven't taken an order in 2 years. I haven't.
I love
I
it.
get to live in downtown Denver. I live right behind Coors Field, where the Rockies play. And I look out the mountains right now. I love this, man. Like,
And you get to work in bed and do all that and be comfortable.
And importantly, what I tell my employees, and I call them my coworkers more often than I call them my employees, because we're a pretty flat org structure. The whole thing with me is that I think this is what we were getting at earlier. Jobs should be additive to somebody's life. They shouldn't detract from somebody's life. And so for me, I really try to pass on the freedom that I feel, even though it's not, my employees or my coworkers' company in the same, equitable ownership that I have. It's still something where I want them to feel like if they want to go to Austin, like one of my coworkers is getting married in a couple weeks. She's got to go to Austin to get married, and she's flying back home for that every week to like meet with her parents in the venue and stuff. Like, I'm like, take all the time you need. Like if a fire is burning down, that means we don't have enough people, want to hire somebody else. Like, take all the time you need. And then, I got employees who work remotely from California. Somebody this next year wants to go to Japan. Like, and as long as they get their work done, I really don't care. And
Right.
I don't want to ever find myself where I've got a company where people feel like the job is making their lives worse. And not just from a financial perspective, but from just a quality of life standpoint,
Yeah, that's so good. It sounds like you have that whole 4-hour work week mentality, not just for you, but everyone that's in your group.
Dude, I work more hours than anybody I know. I dream about this stuff. I'm like a 4 a.m. worker. I sleep 4 or 5 hours a night. But the thing is that what I love about being a founder and an entrepreneur is that if it's Wednesday and I feel like sleeping until 11 or 12 o'clock, I wake up, I text my team, I'm like, hey, I'm offline until noon, and I roll back over, and that's it.
Love it.
That's awesome.
But then, if I got to work a Saturday, so be it. But then if I want to fly, I flew to Scotland in April with my dad. My dad's 65. We're not going to have a lot of time to do this very much longer. And, we flew out to Scotland for 3 weeks and we played golf and we drank scotch and
that's awesome.
That's the type of stuff that I think that life is really all about. And I even if you're making I have friends who are in banking, they make so much make more money than God. And they cannot enjoy it, at least.
No. Ask them to go on a 3-week vacation with you, and they'd never be able to do it.
It's not happening.
Yeah,
they're married to their desk.
Right, and I'm not saying that their way is wrong. It's just different, and it's just and it's not for me. So
yep, that's awesome.
Yeah.
All right, Colin. So we're just going to transition right over to our moments of truth questions here. It's the same 7 questions we ask all our guests, and I'm just going to kick it off with the first one here. Who is your success role model?
Oh man, I mean, it's so cliche, but it was okay. So 2, personally, it's my dad. My dad, I wrote this paper when I was in high school. Same thing. Who's your hero? And he's. My mom too is they're both together after 36 years. They're both entrepreneurs. My dad's got a law firm in South Florida that I think at its peak was like 150 employees or something like that. My mom's got an acupuncture office. She's an acupuncture physician. My sister's now an acupuncture physician and owns that office with her. So my whole family, we're all self-employed.
Get the entrepreneurial gene.
Yeah.
That's
I
awesome.
knew so my dad, he started a law firm in 91. I was 1 year old, and my dad would get up at 5 a.m. He'd be gone by the time I woke up for school. He'd be back at maybe 10 o'clock at night most nights, on a normal schedule. But he also made time to be and coach at every soccer game. Never missed a practice. He'd show up at 7 o'clock in his suit from the law firm, and he was a terrifying coach, with the clipboard and the suit,
Right.
and like the stress from the day of the law firm on his head, and and he was the best. He was my hero, and then my mom, she was a court reporter, and then she quit. She went back to Chinese medical school, became an acupuncturist, and opened up her own practice in 1998. And for my parents to be able to do that, for my dad to do that when he had, my sister was 4 years old and I was 1 year old, and my mom supporting him, stay-at-home mom for a number of years until she went back to school, like that stuff to me is that's always my entrepreneur role model. And then the very cliched answer is Elon Musk. I mean, the guy's on the board to transition from a very heartfelt thing to a very cliched thing. He is a fucking maniac, and I definitely cannot fathom building 4 companies the size that he has. I'm building a bedsheets company, and I'm already wildly overwhelmed. So he's most impressive dude I know in the business world.
Yeah, I was listening to a Joe Rogan podcast.
That was
yesterday.
a great interview.
Yeah, and Joe keeps trying to ask him, where do you find all the time? And it's like, he can't even answer the question. Like, it just comes he just does all that stuff naturally, which is wild.
He's got a great saying that I really believe, which is it's not for everybody, but when you're starting a business, if you're working 16 hours a day and everybody else is working 8 hours a day, if a year goes by, or 6 months, let's say 6 months goes by, you just did a year's worth of work in the time it took them to do 6 months worth of work. Yep. And it's not a perfectly linear equation. You do have work productivity drop off after a certain amount of hours per day. Right. But there are people that can do 12 to 16 hours a day routinely. And I think I'm one of those people where, like, I almost fucking killed myself for a year. I was working so hard on this company, and I think it showed in our output. And I think that's one of the biggest differentiators. And so I really look up to him for what he's been able to do in a relatively short lifespan.
That's awesome. So next question, what is your biggest success?
Honestly, it's convincing thousands of people to wait 5 months for bed sheets on a crowdfunding campaign. I honest to God did not know if it was going to work or not. And it's a testament to the brand that we built, and the copy that I wrote, and the voice, and the people don't give you their money for a crowdfunding project because they want the product. I mean, there is a piece of that when it's like new and innovative and that sort of thing. But ours was bed sheets, and so yes, they were sustainable. Yes, honest to God, these shameless product plug, these are the best goddamn bed sheets you'll ever have in your entire life. You look at eucalyptus sheets, you will find us. So there was an element of that, but when you're waiting 5 months for something that you can go down the corner store and buy something that's a comparable substitute, I'm just very proud of the brand that we built. I really, really am.
That's huge.
It sounds like it's growing, and it's going to be something even bigger than it already is. So
hopefully.
I need new sheets. I'm actually going to go buy some. So I'm dead serious.
Thank you. Well, sure. And in terms of a slightly less self-serving answer, we donate bed sheets to homeless shelters in Denver, Denver Rescue Mission, and sheets. I don't know if people watching this know that sheets are the number 2 most requested item at homeless shelters behind socks. So we do a lot of donations. We plant a tree for every single order. We've now planted over 20,000 trees. Every sheet set that we sell, we save about 1,000 gallons of water, estimated, versus cotton sheets. So we've saved 20 million gallons of water, which is, something like 100 million. No, what am I saying? We save like
it's a lot of water.
every sheet set is 5 years worth of the average person's drinking water that we save. So we've saved about 100,000 years worth of the average person's drinking water so far. And so,
how cool is that?
Yeah. So stuff like that I'm also very, very proud. And we do this stuff in the background. I don't make it a central part of the brand, honest to God, because it feels disingenuous for me to do. I like being a good person. I like doing good things. And my last company was a anti-sexual assault company, and that really got me out of bed every morning, was like fighting against that problem. And so this is more for us internally. So when we look up one day, we want to say, holy shit, we just planted our 1 millionth tree. That, that's the type of stuff. But it's not I'm selling sheets, so I'm not curing cancer, and I don't want to be disingenuous. We try to have fun, and we do good, and that's basically the
love it.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
So what does a typical day for you look like, Colin?
Generally speaking, I roll out of bed at 9:04. I have a 9:05 standing meeting with my team. So I go and I click the Google Hangout link and I go, "Good morning, everybody." I hope they never see that. And then I basically get.
Wait, you're not kidding. I thought you were joking.
No, I'm dead serious. It's exactly what I do every morning.
That is too funny.
I am not an early bird. I am a night owl.
So wow. This is proof that you don't have to wake up at 5 a.m. to be a top CEO or business owner.
And honest to God, if I didn't have, at some level when you are managing people, you have to have structure in terms of like timing.
Mm-hmm.
But again, staying true to what I really want for my team. You don't have to be in the office for the 9:05. You don't have to be somewhere. You just have to be on the call.
Okay.
And if you have other shit to do, you just Slack us and you're like, "Hey, I have other shit to do right now. Here's my virtual check-in." You send us. It's a 5-minute thing. It's your top thing you're working on that day. Any problems you're having. It's like a Scrum meeting. I
love that idea.
Yeah. And so I basically roll out of bed. I put on water boil. I just bought. I'm just so shitty in new age. I just bought these smart plugs for Alexa, so I can basically start my coffee boiler without me having to press a button. It's like the douchiest thing in the world. But you know, like I make a cup of coffee. I feed my dog. I walk my dog. I will then probably shower, put on a t-shirt and pants, go into the office from like 10 through probably 6 or 7. I'm always at the office for probably 9 hours a day or so.
Okay.
And then I will just work until I go hit the gym, and then I'll probably go out with friends or on a date or watch something on Netflix, and then that's it. And so that's my pretty typical day. And then I travel a lot too. I go see my family in Florida and friends in Seattle and stuff like that.
That's awesome.
Sounds like a productive day.
It's a productive day. And then after dinner, you know, it's 10 or 11 o'clock, I get my second win, and that's when I work from like 11 till 2 or 3 every day.
Awesome. So now you're dipping into my schedule now, working overnight.
Yeah.
So.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Well, and I love working after dark because no one else is online.
Yep.
You just crushing your work.
It's just you. Yeah.
And then you wake up in the morning and it just you feel like you got so much stuff done.
That's right.
Like, you know, it's all bonus work too. It's the best.
I totally know what you're saying.
It's the best.
Yep.
Yeah.
I do it the opposite though. I do it really early.
Some people, that's like Bob
Right.
Iger. I just bought his book because I'm interested in what he has to say about management style. But he gets up at like 4:15 in the morning every day, and maybe I'll evolve into that one day, but holy hell, I don't know.
Yeah. That's cool.
Get that guy some more bed sheets so he sleeps in a lot.
Yeah, seriously.
Right. I was gonna say you have the great sheets and everything now, so you have an excuse to sleep.
It's hard to get out of bed, man.
I'll bet.
I'm telling you.
That's funny. What's your favorite quote?
Favorite quote is who the hell is it by? I can't remember who said it. Maybe you guys will, but it might be Sinclair, but it's difficult to get a man to understand something if his job requires him to not understand it. And I think that's kind of one of my favorite quotes in general, because like it's about corruption. It's about people not doing their jobs well because I have a big problem with coworkers sometimes. Not my coworker. This is why I hire for people for my profile.
Mm-hmm.
In a lot of jobs, you'll notice there are coworkers and people who don't do work. They just push work around with a broom, and they're really, really good at pushing work around with a broom.
Absolutely.
Like George Costanza, right? I mean, it's a Seinfeld character, and I think that people like that are very skilled at surviving on what the system that we built for ourselves in 2019. They're very, very good at making themselves appear valuable without actually adding value. And I think that that's a variation of that quote. That why I like that quote so much in terms of business is like, it's really hard to get somebody to stop behaving in a certain way if they're getting paid to behave in that way. And so it's about aligning incentives and setting systems up according to the incentives that you want. Like my marketing team gets bonuses when we exceed sales goals, and they get raises without being asked. And like it's the incentive system that you build. I think it's important.
So your interests are all aligned there.
Yeah, exactly. You really like I have hired people in the past who have had salaries based on revenue, and they don't give a shit about cost of acquisition, because
Oh,
because it's all our revenue.
right.
And then
Yeah.
and then I've hired people whose stuff is based on profit, and they don't maximize revenue because they want to get the max
Mhm.
possible margin.
Right.
So
Yeah.
there's a it's just one of those things I think it initially applies to government corruption, and it's hard to get somebody to understand something if their job relies on them not understanding it.
Right.
But I think that it applies to a lot of parts of business as well.
Yeah.
Colin, what are some of your hobbies outside of working on the business?
I'm a certified yoga instructor, and I love going to. I don't teach anymore. I don't have time, but I love going to yoga, hot yoga specifically, and just sweating it out and killing an hour.
Mhm.
It's also great for hangovers, man. I love. I'm giving being too forthcoming in this interview. I love going to travel different places. I was in this year. I've been to Scotland, London, Amsterdam, and Bogota, Colombia, and then I in the last couple of years I've been to India and Dubai and
Oh, nice.
Japan, and I love going to new places and meeting new people and eating all the food I can. And
Love
then
that.
and then I'm just a classic extrovert. So like I just love going out with friends. And like yesterday we played our softball playoffs for Denver
Mhm.
rec league, and we got wrecked. And we were a pretty good team though. We just ran it. We got a bad day.
Uh,
And so we just went out and, we watched the Packers game and the Broncos game and just had, me and 12 of my friends. And that's the type of stuff I love, is just hanging out with people and talking for
yeah.
6 or 7 hours. That's what I really live for.
Good stuff.
Yeah.
Good stuff. What is the best business book that you've read?
Probably Venture Deals by Brad Feld. Um,
What's it
that's
called?
Venture Deals by Brad
Okay.
Feld. It's specifically around fundraising.
Okay.
And then there's Do More Faster by David Cohen.
Mhm.
And so those are big Colorado books. So Do More
Okay.
Faster is by David Cohen's the founder of Techstars, and then Venture Deals is about raising money, and that's by Foundry Group's Brad Feld, and they were the principal investors in Fitbit,
Oh,
Rover,
wow.
Spiro, a bunch of other great companies. And so I really love those two books, and we're now a Techstars company, and we're also pretty embedded in the Colorado ecosystem. So I really
Nice.
like those two. Yeah.
Very cool.
Awesome. So, Colin, last question here. If there's one key piece of advice you could leave our listeners with about achieving success, what do you think it would be?
Ties into the last question. I was actually thinking about this while I was answering. So, okay, I have two things. I'm gonna cheat. I have two things.
Yeah.
One is that there's no book that's gonna tell you how to build a business, and I think that a lot of people get really, really, really caught up in reading the Lean Startup and all these other different books that tell them how to win a business, how to do this, how to do that. And there's an educational aspect to it. There's a way of thinking, but the only way that you can really learn is by doing. And so I do think at some point, even though I advise not joining other people's startups if you want to get rich, but if you want to get rich in experience, joining a startup in your 20s or anytime really is a really awesome way to get those hard lessons hot wired into you. And then the second thing is start with a business model.
Mhm.
So way too many people start with a product. And what I mean by that is people get obsessed over a problem, over a perceived solution. They spend years of their life building the perceived solution for the perceived problem. They think that, oh, I have this problem. Everybody will have this problem. That's the old business adage, right? Oh, if you have this problem, other people have this problem, and you can
Right.
make money by solving this problem for them. Problem is that oftentimes you'll spend years of your life and hundreds of thousands of dollars or millions of dollars building something the market rejects. And you should have tested that and validated that way early on. Or more insidiously, you'll build something and the market will say, we really love this, just not at this price. And then your net margins will never work for you to build a profitable company from it.
Mm,
And so I think that you have to start with a financial model and a business model, and you have to say, okay, what are my assumed variable costs? What are my assumed fixed costs? What are my assumed return rates, because people don't even think about return rates, cash off the top. What are my assumed, cost of acquisition and my assumed, gross margins? Like there's all these different things that you need to like sit down and understand before you ever take a single step further. And I think that people will start with a product and then try to build a business around it, which is very, very difficult because the product is not very malleable. Like once you build something, especially if it's a physical product, it's very hard to change it into something that the market will accept. It's much easier to build a business model that's profitable and scalable and sustainable, and then create a product that plugs into that model. And I think that's the way I would like more people to start a business. And I think that you'll avoid a lot of heartbreak that way. So
yeah, you got to be organized. And
yeah,
I know a guy who's doing a direct-to-consumer hanger company. Hangers. New direct-to-consumer and I said there's no. I literally, and I should be the last person to ever say to somebody. I said there's no way that you could do a direct-to-consumer hanger company.
Mm-hmm.
And he was like, "Watch me, motherfucker." And he sent me some numbers. There's how many hangers are there's something like 12 billion hangers or something that are sold in the US every single year or something. Some obscene number.
Yep.
And they all, they break, they've got like the little points, like anyway, he's got a value proposition that's mildly interesting that I think could actually really work. So I'm kind of, the bottom line is that he never grew up. The guys at Casper never thought that they would sell mattresses for a living, but they were the fastest company ever to $100 million. I never thought I would sell bed sheets for a living.
But true.
I love what I do, and it gives me a lot of freedom. And my buddy, I guarantee you, never thought he'd be selling hangers for a living. But a compelling business model is a compelling business model. Period.
That's right. That's right.
That's so, really Colin, how can our listeners get in contact with you or the company, or buy your sheets online or in store?
Yeah, and it sounded like you said you like to go on dates, so I assume you're single. So how can
Yeah.
You don't want to date me, man. I'm a hard person.
How can the ladies listening? It sounds like you're an eligible bachelor.
Let's not. I don't cross those two worlds.
I'm kidding.
Yeah, it's not
totally
worth it.
kidding.
No, I know. It's not. My buddies are always like, "Oh, you must have the funniest pickup lines." Like, "Oh, you test the sheets." I'm like, "You guys." I'm like, "You guys would just be terrible people if you were me."
That's hilarious.
No. It's actually really, to segue real quick. It's really hard to tell people what I do because you're at a bar. First question is always, "Hey, what do you do?" And I'm like, "Oh, I have a bedding company called Sheets and Giggles." And I swear to God, every girl I tell that to is like, "Okay," like it's like it's like doing a bit. So I've worked it around into I have a sustainability company.
Nice.
Yeah. So anyway. I have like 2,200 unread emails, so do not email me. I'm at Colin D as in Douglas Mcintosh, MCINTOSH, Colin with one L. And the company is Sheets and Giggles. It's just at Sheets Giggles everywhere. No and in our social handles, just Sheets Giggles. Our website, sheetsgiggles.com. So just like the brand name, just no and. And you can Google us. You can look us up. We got great SEO. We're the first result on Amazon for eucalyptus sheets. First result on Google for eucalyptus sheets. And I'm pretty easy to find. I'm pretty. Especially if you're in Colorado, I'm out and about, and I got the judge Denver Startup Week this year, which is a lot of fun. So
nice.
Great.
Very cool.
That's awesome.
Very
well, everybody go buy some sheets, and they're doing some awesome stuff. They're planting trees, so
you'll help save the world.
Yeah,
totally open return policies. So you literally cannot regret buying our sheets.
I love it.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, Colin, we appreciate you being on the show today. I mean, we went forever, and I think we could go even longer. So, I really appreciate the value that you added. You got a lot of good information and experience that you provided us.
No, this is a super fun interview. I appreciate you guys having me on. I feel like I might have talked a little too much, but that's the whole point of the show. I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. And for our listeners, don't forget, subscribe to the show so that you don't miss any of these awesome interviews that we're doing daily. And also follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/groups/wealth junkies. Again, Colin, we appreciate you being on with us today. And thanks again.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for having me, guys. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Colin. See you guys tomorrow.